I'm Ira Mendelsberg, and even though the rest of the team didn't introduce themselves, they told me I should. I am one of this congregation's liaisons to UU Faith Action New Jersey, and I am pleased to be able to introduce to you the Reverend Charles Loflin, the current executive director of UU-FANJ. FANJ, in their own words, coordinates grassroots social justice advocacy, I don't know why I can't say the word, advocacy with our member congregations and individual UUs and allies across the state of New Jersey. We work to establish a just and compassionate public policy that is consistent with Unitarian Universalist principles and purposes, upholding the worth and dignity of every person, furthering justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, ensuring the use of the democratic process, protecting religious freedom, and promoting respect for the interdependent web of all existence. FANJ puts this credo into action by direct lobbying of our legislators, by letter writing and campaigns and rallies, by providing testimony at hearings and acting as witnesses alongside the many coalition partners. Since its inception in 2010, UU-FANJ has been instrumental in having legislation enacted to protect women, LGBTQ+ individuals, and the environment. All this work is done by UU volunteers from across the state, and funding is provided by UU member congregations, from grants, and from individual donations from you and me. More information can be found at the USR newsletter and online at uufaithaction.org. Reverend Loflin.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you for that so much. Good morning, friends. I am the Reverend Charles Loflin. My pronouns are he and they. And it is a great pleasure to be with you this morning. As you've heard, I have the privilege and the honor to serve as the executive director for UU Faith Action New Jersey. Now, UU Faith Action New Jersey was formerly known as the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministries of New Jersey, because we UUs love really long names that just roll off the tongue. But it was established to be a collaboration among the UU congregations in New Jersey to advocate for our values in the public square, and in particular to advocate for UU values with New Jersey lawmakers. Over the years, this congregation has been a crucial partner with UU Faith Action. We state proudly that our vision is to build a just New Jersey, a just New Jersey free from systemic oppression and greed, full of engaged people committed to each other, to our communities, and to the earth. Our threefold mission is to educate, to advocate, and to mobilize. And the work that we do is centered within our task forces. Our current task forces include criminal justice reform, environmental justice, immigration justice, reparative justice, and reproductive justice. And if you have not already, I urge you, as Ira did, to visit our website. That's uufaithaction.org, and you will find at the very top of that page, there's a blue bar, and there's a link in that blue bar where you can sign up to receive our emails and text alerts. This will add you to our mailing list so that you will receive updates with the things that we're working on, action alerts, newsletters, our calendar of events. This is really important because from our inception, we've taken great care to respect the individual privacy of those who are affiliated with us. We do not share your email address with anyone ever. In fact, we do not send any unsolicited emails at all. So the only way you get communication from us is you have to go to our website and opt in to receive those communications. I also have to say a major thank you for your financial commitment that makes this work possible. Ira was saying that part of our budget, about 30% of our budget, comes from our individual affiliated congregations, our UU congregations in New Jersey. 30%. That's pretty easy math for me to do. That means that about 70% of our contributions come from individual donors like you, who feel that the work, the social justice work of UU Faith Action New Jersey, is an important part of living out their values. It is your support that makes a real difference on issues of equity and justice as we work collaboratively, not only with UU congregations, but with frontline communities, with the advocacy groups that are on the ground, and with the coalition partners who know this work. I want to, this is dangerous, but I'll do it anyway. I want to acknowledge some of the people here in the Unitarian Universalist Society of Ridgewood who have been so critical to our work. It's dangerous because I'm going to leave someone off the list because it always happens that way. But I have to give my best shot here, right? I have to begin by thanking the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lindsay, because she currently serves on the Board of Trustees for UU Faith Action New Jersey, as does Lily Karianis. Ira Mendelsberg, who you've heard from this morning, along with Anita Young, serve as UUSR's congregational liaisons. They are the ones who are responsible for helping make sure that we are aware of what's going on here in your congregation, and that your congregation is aware of what we are doing. And I want to acknowledge, especially this morning, the dedicated, long-time dedicated work of Carol Lascalzo, who has served as the co-chair of our Reproductive Justice Task Force. Carol has done amazing, amazing work over the years, and I am so grateful for her ongoing service and commitment. And of course, there are so many, many, many others. I took a look at our database yesterday. We have 60 contacts in our database who have indicated that they have some sort of affiliation with UUSR. 60 people in our contact list who come from this congregation. Now, again, I can do a little bit of math, and if my math is correct, based on the numbers that this congregation reports to the UUA in terms of its total membership, that means that those 60 subscribers basically represent about 29% of this congregation's membership. That's a really great number. Thank you for being involved and for being connected. And if you're not in that group, well, now you know what to do. You're going to go visit the website, you're going to sign up and get that information. I am grateful for the invitation to be here today because, to a great extent, it is services like this where we get to be in the congregations and talk about the work that we're doing. This is often our first way to connect with UUs about the social justice work. It is an unfortunate truth that too often we are a well-kept secret in UU circles. Some congregations know more about us than others, but again, because we're not out there in your face pushing information, unless you hear about us through your newsletter or through a conversation that happens in your pulpit, chances are you're not going to know much about what we're doing. But one of the very best part of my jobs are opportunities like this, to be in conversation and connection that happens in a service like this. And as has already been stated, I want to remind you that after the service, immediately after the service, during coffee hour, there's going to be an opportunity for you to connect with us. We would love to talk with you. And I want to give a shout out to Tom Moran, who is here in the audience today. Tom Moran is our chair of our Criminal Justice Reform Task Force. And Tom has some information set up with coffee hour to share specifically about something that we have coming in the next year. There is a campaign called the Second Look New Jersey campaign. This is really promising. It would promote resentencing hearings for incarcerated persons who are 60 years of age or older and who have served at least 20 years in prison and who have had exemplary records over that time. So please come if you can to find out more. We'd love to just talk with you, hear about what you're doing, and suggest ways that you could get involved with the work that we're doing. Now, I was asked today specifically to reflect a bit on the topic of helping our neighbors. And I was also asked to keep my remarks brief. Now, I can full-heartedly do the former because that's pretty easy, but I will do my best to do the latter as well. You see, for me, my work, not only at UU Faith Action, but my work as a UU minister, as an affiliated community minister with the UU congregation at Montclair, is grounded in social justice. Social justice is what moves me. It's what guides me to get up. It's what directs me to do this work. For me, my Unitarian Universalist values call me to literally find ways to put this faith into action. I think it's that important. And what could be a more succinct summary of what it is to put your faith into action than to say, I want to help my neighbor? I think most of you here can hardly agree that you very much feel the call to help your neighbor. It's pretty straightforward, right? Who can argue with such simple truth? Helping our neighbors, it's basic. But it does raise two kind of big questions, doesn't it? Who is my neighbor? And what does it mean to help? Who is my neighbor, and what does it mean to help? You know, as Marilyn said earlier, neighbors are certainly not defined based purely on street addresses or geographical proximity. That can't be the case. In the Christian scriptures, in the Gospel of Luke, perhaps you're familiar with this story. Jesus is approached and asked a question. The person who comes to him says, hey, what do I need to do to have eternal life? What do I need to do to live the good life? What do I need to do to have everything right? And Jesus quotes from the Torah and says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and with all your mind. And then adds to it a second quote from the Torah, love your neighbor as yourself. Pretty good advice, but not to be put out, the man responds with the big question, the $64,000 question, and who is my neighbor? Because that makes all the difference, doesn't it? Who is my neighbor? And in response, Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. You're probably familiar with this story. You know, there's a man who's traveling, he's attacked by robbers, he's beaten and left for dead on the side of the road. And then a priest is coming by, sees what's happened, and decides not to get involved, crosses to the other side of the road, and just keeps going. And then a little bit later, another traveler comes upon the scene. This time, he's just identified as a Levite. And the Levite also passes on the other side, chooses not to get involved, and heads on his merry way. But finally, a traveler comes along who we are told is a Samaritan. And the Samaritan sees what happens and gets involved. The Samaritan bandages his wounds. He takes him to the next inn. He cares for him. And then the very next day, he pays the innkeeper some money to continue this person's care and promises to compensate him for anything more that he might spend. So at the end of this story, Jesus asks a simple question. I can imagine the crowds being dumbfounded because Jesus asks, and who do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell to the hands of the robbers? It doesn't take a seminary degree to know the answer to that one, does it? The only possible reply is the one who had mercy on him. That's a loud and clear message, isn't it? Your neighbor, my neighbor, our neighbor is anyone who has need. Anyone who has need. That is a truth that is spoken and reiterated across religious traditions, across differing cultures. It is core to who we are as human beings. You know, there is a dominant cultural insistence that human interaction is rooted fundamentally in competition, that we're all in a fight with each other for survival. But you know what the evolutionary biologists are clear about? It is that the interdependence and cooperation of humanity has been the key to our survival as a species. It is because we see the needs of the other and we respond that we get to keep on living. That's what's built into our DNA. That's what we really know when we put all the ideologies aside. We know it, don't we? We know it in the depth of our souls that the only meaningful definition of neighbor is an all-inclusive one. Throw the doors open wide. Throw them wider still, lest we exclude the stranger and make a prison of our own choices. It isn't a question about who our neighbor is. We know who our neighbor is. You know who your neighbor is. I know who my neighbor is. That part we know. But that other question, that second question, that somewhat nagging question, what does it mean to help? Is that a more complex question to answer? Now, I cannot help but be cognizant that this is a time of year when so many of us are navigating the complexities of various holiday seasons and traditions. And there is sometimes, at least on the surface, a greater awareness at this time of year of the needs of others, and at least some expectation that we tend to try to be a little more generous during the holidays. We are more apt to help at this time of year. I don't know if that's based on anything that comes from inside or if it's based on the reality that the tax year is ending and we've got to get those donations in if they're going to count. But it happens. We try to get more involved. And please don't get me wrong here. Organizations like mine, like UU Faith Action, depend on the financial generosity of the season. It's critical for the work that we do because your strategic and intentional giving can make a huge impact, and it can do a tremendous amount of good. It can help. But I will also say that at least for me personally, that help sometimes doesn't sit quite right. Sometimes it feels a little transactional, doesn't it? Transactional. I mean, rooted in charity, yes, and there's a place for charity, but there's a distinction between relationships that are based on transaction and relationships that are built on transformation. That's part of what I heard in the story of Family Promise this morning. They're not interested in transactional relationships. They're interested in transformational relationships. Is there a need for transaction? Is there an immediate need to help? Of course there is. But if we're going to address fundamental underlying causes, if we're going to address the systematic causes, we've got to get a little deeper than our transactions. We have to be willing to risk some transformation. Why does it matter? Because our approach to understanding that difference is an approach to understanding the power dynamics at play. You see, transactional relationships are often marked by a tangible power differential. Someone has a lot more power in that relationship, and someone has a lot less. And whatever happens in a transactional relationship, I can assure you at the end that the person who started with the power retains the power. There's no chance that they're going to be moved by that transaction. By contrast, a transformative relationship, there may be a power differential in place. There may very well be a power differential, but in a transformative relationship, there is always the potential for change. A transactional relationship is one way. One side is benefiting more than the other. But in a transformational relationship, what I do not only impacts you, it impacts me. And how you receive not only impacts you, it impacts me. Transformation. You see where I'm going with this? When we talk about helping our neighbor, if we're going to talk about really helping our neighbor, we're going to have to get beyond the transactional interaction, and we're going to have to dig into transformative change because it matters. Because these are matters of life and death. There are those who are suffering, and their suffering should matter. But collectively, we must be careful if in our power differential, we decide that we are going to do for. Because when we're doing for others, we've erected a barrier that prevents us from being impacted by what happens. See, the real work of social justice is not to do for, it's to do with. It's to listen to the individuals who are most impacted by the systemic oppression and injustice that we're fighting. It's to take our lead from those who know best because they are experiencing it. And this can be a challenge. This can be a challenge for us. At UU Faith Action, our mission statement says that we envision to build a just New Jersey free from systemic oppression and greed, full of engaged people committed to each other, to our communities, and to the earth. See, to me, that says that our focus is not on charity. It is not on the transactional, but instead it's rooted in transformational relationship. You know who your neighbor is. The question is, are we willing to risk transformation in the process of doing real help? Are we ready to get our hands dirty, to be in relationship with the people that we say we care about? Are we ready to listen to what they tell us they need rather than assuming that we know best, rather than approaching it in a way that is alienating, that is patriarchal, that is supremacist? We can do this work in a way that matters and has a real impact if we are willing to make ourselves vulnerable to transformation. And there's some caveats for that. There's no doubt about it. You know what the honest truth is? This work is hard. This work is long haul. You're not going to figure it out quickly and be done. The issue of homelessness is not going away overnight. It's something that's a long-term problem, as are all of these other problems. It's long-haul work. It's difficult work. It has to be grounded in relationship if it's going to do any good. And if it's going to be grounded in relationship, it requires those who have the greater power to risk the vulnerability. I hope that you will join us in this work. I think it's built into the DNA of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. I think we are called at this time to focus on the systemic oppression that we face at every turn. I think it is a generational change that is happening within our movement. It's uneven. It's not always easy to see where we're going to go, but beloved, if we are willing to risk, if we are willing to be in relationship, we will be changed by this work. We will be changed by this work. We help our neighbors because ultimately, that is how we help ourselves. Amen.